I never thought Thanksgiving would become the battlefield where my family's buried truths would finally claw their way to the surface. For years, I tried convincing myself that my parents' favoritism toward my younger sister wasn't on purpose, that maybe I was just being too sensitive. But deep down, I always knew something was off. My name is Ria, and this is how my sister tried to strip me of my dignity, and how the truth ended up stripping her of everything she thought she had. That morning, I drove 4 hours to my parents' house, foolishly hoping this year might be different. That maybe we'd sit around the table, talk about our lives, laugh about old memories, and just exist without drama. But the moment I stepped through the door, I felt tension tightening around me like a noose. My sister, Celine, greeted me with a smile so sweet it practically dripped poison. "So glad you could make it, Ria," she said, emphasizing could, like she wasn't expecting me to show up. She wore an emerald green dress with perfect makeup and blonde hair curled into loose spirals. The whole presentation seemed over the top for a family dinner. But Celine always treated gatherings like an audition for Best Daughter of the Year. Mom and Dad hovered around her like she was their living trophy. I tried not to let it bother me. After all, she'd always been the golden child, their pride and joy. Growing up, I'd been the responsible one, the academic one, the one who got things done. Celine was the favorite, no matter how much trouble she caused or how often she manipulated people around her. But today, their favoritism was about to evolve into something much worse. Before I continue, let me ask you this. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted most? If you have, you'll feel this story deep in your soul. And if you know that kind of pain, hit subscribe. Not because it helps me, but because stories like this remind us that sometimes silence and strength are the best revenge. We took our places at the table. Dad carved the turkey, Mom passed the stuffing, and cranberry sauce made its rounds. Everything looked normal, right until dessert was being served. Celine clinked her glass. "I have an announcement," she said, standing up with the confidence of someone who thought the world revolved around her. Everyone turned. Dad smiled proudly. Mom clasped her hands like she already knew what was coming. I braced myself. Then Celine said it. "Mom and Dad are signing the house over to me. I'll be the sole owner. Ria, you get nothing." A murmur spread around the table. Some relatives gasped. Someone whispered, "Wow." Others exchanged awkward glances. But the worst part? My parents nodded. Dad said, "It just makes sense. Celine is planning to raise her family here." And Mom added, "We know you understand, honey. You're independent. You don't need it." Independent. Honey. Two words they only used when they were about to hurt me. Celine flashed a triumphant smile like she'd won some grand competition. Everyone cheered, for her. They thought it was wholesome, heartwarming, a beautiful transfer of legacy. Meanwhile, I sat there trying to keep my breathing steady, watching this circus play out. The way they all looked at Celine with such admiration made my stomach turn. Not one person considered how this might feel to me. Celine looked at me with fake sympathy. "I'm sure you're happy for me, Ria." Everyone stared, waiting to see if I'd bow to her arrogance, to their manipulation. Instead, I smiled. A slow, deliberate smile that made Celine's confidence flicker. And I said the words that changed everything. "Dad, should I tell them? Or will you?" A hush fell over the room. Dad froze, fork halfway to his mouth. Celine's face drained of color. "Tell us what?" she snapped. "You know what hurts the most? Not what they did, but that I still tried to make them proud after everything. If you've ever given people too many chances, you already understand this pain. Don't just scroll, subscribe. Join people who've been through it too, because you deserve stories that make you feel seen. To understand what I was about to reveal, You need to know what happened 3 years ago. That's when everything changed between us, though my family pretends it didn't. Dad fell seriously ill. The doctors weren't sure he'd make it. His body grew weak, his movements slowed, and suddenly the man who never needed anyone needed constant help. Where was Celine during this nightmare? Mostly absent. She was busy with her social life, her job hunt, her relationship drama, her weekend trips. She showed up maybe twice a month, took selfies with Dad for social media, then disappeared again. Meanwhile, I put my entire life on pause. I moved back home. I drove Dad to every appointment. I cooked meals he could keep down. I paid for medications when insurance fell short. I slept in a chair beside his bed on the worst nights. I never complained. I never asked for recognition. I did it because he was my father. But Celine hated it. She hated that Dad depended on me, that he trusted me with important things, especially financial matters. She hated that I had information she didn't. That's when Dad made his decision. During one of his worst days, he asked me to sit with him in his office. He wanted to make sure his affairs were handled properly when the time came. I expected him to divide everything equally between Celine and me. Instead, he said, "Ria, your sister has never been responsible with money. She makes reckless decisions. I want you to be the executor of my estate." I blinked in surprise. Executor? You want me to control everything? He nodded. And not just that. The house. I'm giving it to you. You've earned it. You took care of me. You've always put family first. But why not tell Celine? I asked. Because she'll make a scene. You know her. He wasn't wrong. Dad had his lawyer draft everything. Mom refused to discuss it, pretending reality wasn't happening. But the documents existed. They were legally signed. And Dad told me not to say a word until the time was right. That time had finally arrived. Back at the Thanksgiving table, tension strangled the air. Everyone stared at me like I'd lost my mind challenging the golden child. Celine glared. "Tell us what, Ria?" I leaned back in my chair, letting her panic grow. "It's funny," I said calmly. "How you announced something you were so sure about." Dad's face had turned pale. Mom stared at her plate. "Because the house you're bragging about," I continued, "it's not yours. It was never yours. Dad already signed the deed, and the sole beneficiary isn't you." Celine let out a harsh laugh. "Stop lying. Dad just said—" He said what he thought would keep the peace tonight, but the legal documents say something else entirely. Dad finally spoke, voice trembling. "Celine, sit down." "No," she barked. "She's lying. You said the house was—" "Celine," Dad thundered. She froze. Everyone stared at him. He wiped his mouth, exhaled shakily, and said, "The house was signed over months ago, to Ria." A collective gasp erupted around the table. Forks clattered against plates. Someone knocked over a water glass. Celine's mouth dropped open. "You did what?" Mom whispered. "Honey, calm down. Calm down," Celine shrieked. "You're giving her the house? Why?" Dad looked exhausted, like this confrontation was inevitable. "Because Ria was here," he said quietly. "When I was sick, when I couldn't walk, when I needed someone, she showed up. You didn't." "I was busy," Celine spat. "You were partying," Dad corrected. The room fell silent. Everyone turned to stare at Celine, seeing her differently for the first time. Celine shook her head violently. "This is a joke. This is a joke. I'm your daughter too." "And I love you," Dad said, "but love isn't entitlement." Her eyes filled with furious tears as she realized her grand announcement had backfired completely. The house she'd been boasting about, the house she'd publicly humiliated me over, was never hers to claim, and everyone at the table now knew it. Her tears turned to rage in an instant. Celine slammed her hand on the table so hard the plates jumped. "You can't do this," she yelled at Dad. "We talked about this. You promised me." Dad shook his head. "I never promised you the house, Celine. Your mother might have implied—" "Mom said you would fix it," Celine interrupted, turning to our mother. All eyes shifted to Mom, who suddenly looked trapped. Her face flushed red. I thought your father would reconsider," she stammered. "I told Celine we could change your mind." Dad's expression hardened. "You did what?" The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. While I was taking care of Dad, Mom had been secretly plotting with Celine to undo his decision. "Mom," I whispered, "why would you do that?" She couldn't meet my eyes. Celine was so upset when she found out. Found out? Dad's voice rose. How did she find out? The only people who knew were me, Rhea, and my lawyer. Mom's silence was answer enough. She'd snooped through his papers and told Celine. Celine was beyond reasoning now. She paced around the table, her perfect curls bouncing with each angry step. "This is so typical. Perfect Rhea gets everything while I get nothing. She's always been your favorite." The irony of her statement made several relatives shift uncomfortably in their seats. Everyone knew the truth was exactly the opposite. Aunt Carol cleared her throat. "Celine, honey, maybe you should calm—" "Don't tell me to calm down!" Celine screamed. She stormed over to Dad, leaning down until her face was inches from his. "Change it back," she demanded. "Call your lawyer tomorrow and change it back." Dad didn't flinch. "No." "Why not?" she shrieked. "Because this house isn't just about property," Dad said firmly. "It's about who I can trust." When I finally stood my ground, they called me heartless. But tell me, where were they when I was breaking? If you've ever had to choose peace over people, this channel is your space. Subscribe, not for me, but for every quiet soul who took their power back. Celine turned to me, fire blazing in her eyes. "You manipulated him when he was sick," she accused. "You took advantage." "That's enough," Dad cut in. "Rhea didn't ask for anything." "This was my decision." "But why her?" Celine demanded. "I'm your daughter too. I deserve—" "Deserve?" Dad interrupted. "What exactly do you deserve, Celine? The house you visit twice a year? The home you couldn't be bothered to help maintain when I was ill?" Celine's jaw tightened. She switched tactics, her voice suddenly soft and wounded. "Daddy, please. I need this house. Rhea has her own place. She doesn't need—" "There's more," I said quietly. Everyone turned to me. "What do you mean, more?" Celine asked. I looked at Dad. He nodded, giving me permission to continue. "Dad didn't just sign the house to me," I explained. "He made me executor of the entire estate." Celine's face went blank. "Executor? What does that even mean?" "It means I control everything," I said. "Every asset, every financial decision, every distribution, everything." Celine staggered backward. No, he didn't." "Yes," Dad confirmed. "Legal and binding." "And do you know why?" I asked her. "Because you've never been responsible with money. Because you've blown through every trust fund, every inheritance from grandparents, every gift." The color drained from Celine's face as she realized the magnitude of what she'd lost. This wasn't just about a house anymore. "You can't do this," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You can't choose her over me." "I'm not choosing anyone over anyone," Dad replied. "I'm protecting our family legacy from being squandered." Celine's expression hardened. She drew herself up to her full height. "If you do this, if you don't change it, I'll leave," she threatened. "I'll cut you all off. You'll never see me again." Dad looked her dead in the eyes. "Then that is your choice." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Dad had chosen truth over Celine's manipulation, and the shock was visible on every face around the table. Celine stared at him, waiting for him to take it back, to say he didn't mean it. When he didn't, she let out a sound between a scream and a sob, then stormed out of the dining room. Her footsteps pounded up the stairs, followed by the slam of her bedroom door. Dinner ended in awkward silence. Uncle Dave muttered something about family matters and quickly gathered his coat. Aunt Carol followed, giving me a sympathetic pat on the shoulder as she left. My cousins avoided eye contact, shuffling out behind their parents. In less than 20 minutes, the house emptied of guests, leaving only the four of us: Mom, Dad, me, and Celine upstairs. Mom moved mechanically, clearing plates while crying quietly. Her hands shook as she stacked dishes in the sink. "I didn't want it to happen like this," she whispered. "I just wanted everyone to be happy." Dad sat heavily in his armchair, looking older than I'd ever seen him. He rubbed his temples, the weight of years of avoidance finally catching up. "It had to come out sometime," he said. "Better now than after we're gone." I helped Mom clean up, neither of us speaking. The clink of silverware and the running water filled the silence between us. Later, I stood outside Celine's door, listening to her sob-filled phone calls as she told her version of events to friends. My name became "that bitch" in her retelling. Dad became senile and manipulated. Mom was weak and useless. I knocked softly. "Celine, can we talk?" The crying stopped. Then, through the wood, she whispered, "You stole everything from me." "No," I answered. "I earned it." "You'll regret this," she threatened. I sighed. "Celine, the house was never the issue. It's how you treat people, how you treat family." She didn't answer. "When you're ready to talk," I said, "I'll be here." All I heard was silence. The next morning, I woke to texts from relatives I hadn't heard from in months. "Are you okay?" from Aunt Carol. "Can we talk?" from Cousin Mike. "I had no idea" from Uncle Dave. By noon, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Family members who had cheered for Celine the night before now wanted to share their real feelings about her. Aunt Carol called first. "I've wanted to say something for years," she confessed. "The way Celine treated your parents when your dad was sick, it wasn't right." Uncle Dave texted, "Your sister once borrowed $5,000 from me, never paid it back, said your parents told her not to worry about it." Cousin Emma revealed, "Celine told everyone you refused to help with Dad's care. We had no idea you were actually doing everything." One by one, relatives shared stories they'd kept quiet for years. Times Celine had borrowed money without repaying. Occasions she'd lied about me to make herself look better. Moments she'd manipulated family events to be the center of attention. I wondered why none of them had spoken up before. "We didn't want to cause trouble," Aunt Carol explained when I asked. "Your mother always defended Celine so fiercely." Mom struggled the most with the fallout. I found her staring at old family photos in the living room, tissues crumpled in her hand. "I thought I was protecting her," Mom said quietly. "Celine always needed more attention, more reassurance. You were so independent, so capable. I didn't think you needed us the same way." She looked up at me, her eyes red. "I was wrong. I'm sorry." Meanwhile, Celine emerged from her room with puffy eyes and a new strategy. She began calling every family member, spinning a tale about how I'd manipulated Dad during his illness. "Rhea convinced him I didn't care," she told our grandmother. "She poisoned him against me." Some believed her. Most didn't. The family was splitting down the middle, forced to choose sides in a battle that had been building for decades. And Celine was just getting started. A week after Thanksgiving, Mom called me in tears. "Rhea, you need to know what your sister's doing." Celine had gone nuclear. She'd consulted 3 different lawyers, determined to overturn Dad's decision. She'd described him as mentally impaired during his illness, claimed I'd isolated him from the family, and insisted the documents couldn't be valid. "She's telling everyone you manipulated Dad," Mom said, "that you took advantage of him when he was vulnerable." I wasn't surprised. Celine always believed she deserved to win, no matter what it took. But what happened next shocked even me. On Monday morning, Celine marched into Dad's lawyer's office without an appointment. According to the receptionist, she demanded to see all documents related to the family estate. When told she had no legal right to that information, she screamed that there had been a terrible mistake and threatened to sue. The lawyer, Mr. Peterson, finally agreed to meet with her, partly out of concern, partly to end the scene she was causing in his lobby. "I've been your father's attorney for 30 years, he told her calmly. These documents were drawn up when he was of sound mind, with multiple witnesses present. Celine wouldn't accept it. "There must be a way to change it," she insisted. "I'm his daughter." That's when Mr. Peterson delivered the final blow. "Miss Williams, your father didn't just sign over the house. He placed all assets in an irrevocable trust with your sister as sole trustee. By design, these documents cannot be challenged or changed, even by him." Celine collapsed into sobs right there in his office. 2 hours later, my phone rang. It was Celine, her voice small and broken. "Ria, please, talk to Dad. Make him change it. I'll be better. I'll try. Just don't do this to me." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered her gloating at Thanksgiving, the way she'd announced my disinheritance with such pleasure, how everyone had cheered while I sat there humiliated. "Celine," I said quietly, "Dad made his choice. You need to accept it." She hung up. When I finally stood my ground, they called me heartless. But tell me, where were they when I was breaking? If you've ever had to choose peace over people, this channel is your space. Subscribe, not for me, but for every quiet soul who took their power back. Mom couldn't stand the tension. She organized what she called a healing dinner the following Sunday. "Just the four of us," she said. "Time to talk things through as a family." I knew it was a mistake before I arrived. Celine sat at the table looking composed but dangerous, like a bomb with a fancy exterior. Mom had made everyone's favorites: pot roast for Dad, lasagna for me, and Celine's preferred salmon, as if comfort food could fix decades of dysfunction. "We're still a family," Mom began, her voice wobbly. "We need to find a way forward." Dad nodded stiffly. Celine stared at her plate. I waited for the explosion I knew was coming. It didn't take long. "I've been thinking," Celine said carefully, "about why Dad would do this to me." Her eyes flicked to mine. And I realized Ria has always been jealous of me. My popularity, my social life, my relationships. She couldn't stand that I was the favorite. I nearly choked on my water. "The favorite? You're seriously going with that?" "Don't deny it," Celine continued. "You've always tried to turn Dad against me because you couldn't stand that Mom loved me more." Mom gasped. "Celine, I never—" "It's true," Celine insisted, and that's not all she did. What came next was a masterclass in projection. Celine accused me of everything she'd done herself. According to her, I'd sabotaged her relationships by telling her boyfriends lies. I'd deliberately stolen opportunities from her. I'd poisoned family members against her for years. Dad finally interrupted. "Enough, Celine. This isn't helping anything." "You don't see it because she fooled you too," Celine cried. "Why can't anyone in this family see what she's really like?" The dinner collapsed from there. Mom retreated to the kitchen in tears. Dad walked out to the porch for air. I sat quietly, watching the destruction of any hope for reconciliation. As Celine stormed out, she turned to me one last time. "This isn't over," she warned. "Family isn't just about paperwork. It's about blood, and our family will never accept you controlling everything." I looked her directly in the eyes. "Maybe," I replied, "but at least they'll finally know the truth." The doorbell rang at 8 a.m. the next morning. Dad opened it to find his mother, my grandmother, standing on the porch with her overnight bag and a determined expression. "I hear my family's falling apart," she announced. "Thought I should see for myself." At 82, Grandma Helen was still sharp as a tack. She'd driven 3 hours after hearing about the Thanksgiving disaster from Uncle Dave. Mom panicked, rushing to make coffee and apologizing for the mess. Dad looked relieved. I helped Grandma settle in the guest room. "So," she said once we were alone, "Celine finally showed her true colors, did she?" I blinked in surprise. "You knew?" Grandma Helen snorted. "Child, I've watched this play out for 30 years. Your mother did the same thing with her sister, and my mother-in-law did it with my husband's brother." "Did what?" I asked. "Picked a golden child," she said flatly. "Made one child the sun, while the other lived in shadow." She opened her purse and pulled out a small leather-bound book. "My journal," she explained. "I've kept one for 60 years. Every Christmas, every birthday, every family gathering. I recorded how your parents treated each of you differently, how Celine got more presents, more attention, more forgiveness." She flipped through yellowed pages filled with neat handwriting. "Here, Celine's 10th birthday, 4-tier cake, pony rides, bouncy castle. And yours? Dinner at Olive Garden, where your mom spent half the night on the phone with Celine's coach about her dance recital." Page after page documented the pattern I'd felt, but could never prove. "Why didn't you say anything?" I asked. Grandma's eyes grew sad. "I tried many times. Your mother wouldn't hear it. Your father listened, but said he needed to keep peace with your mother." She closed the journal. "But that's not why I came," she continued. "I'm here because families shouldn't choose sides. Your parents made Celine believe she was entitled to everything. That wasn't her fault, not at first. But the woman she's become, that's on her." She took my hand. "And you need to hear this. Your daughters are not lifeboats. That's what I told your father yesterday. Parents aren't supposed to climb aboard one child and leave the other to drown." For the first time since Thanksgiving, I felt tears well up. Someone finally understood. Things escalated quickly after Grandma's arrival. Her presence changed the family dynamic, forcing accountability where there had been none. The first domino fell when Celine's fiancé, Mark, stopped by unexpectedly. He'd been away on business during Thanksgiving and had only heard Celine's version of events. He wanted to clear things up with Dad. We sat in the living room as Dad explained everything: his illness, my caregiving, Celine's absence, and his decision about the estate. Mark grew quieter with each detail. When Dad finished, Mark stood up abruptly. "She told me you were mentally declining and Rhea took advantage," he said. "She said you'd always promised her the house because she was your special girl." His expression hardened. "This isn't the first time she's twisted the truth." He left without another word. 3 days later, Celine's relationship status changed on social media. The engagement was off. The second blow came from the family accountant. While reviewing the estate planning, he discovered something troubling: credit card debt in Celine's name, using my parents' address. Further investigation revealed she'd opened cards in her name, but with Dad as an authorized user, racking up over $30,000 in charges. She claimed they were joint expenses for the house, the accountant explained, but the charges are for designer clothes, spa weekends, and first-class flights. Dad's face paled as the evidence mounted. The stress took a visible toll. His hands shook more. His breathing grew labored. One night, Mom found him sitting alone in the dark, staring at old family photos. "Where did we go wrong?" he asked her. "How did we raise someone who would do this?" The next morning, Dad didn't come down for breakfast. I found him still in bed, too exhausted to get up. The doctor confirmed what we feared: his heart condition was worsening under the stress. As his health declined, I faced the hardest decision yet. As executor, I had the power to protect my parents from Celine's financial manipulation. I could cut her off completely. But would that push Dad further into decline? Would using my legal power make me just as controlling as Celine, just in a different way? The house that was supposed to be my victory now felt like a burden. My father was paying for his choice with his health. My mother was torn between her children. And somewhere along the way, justice had started to look a lot like punishment. I had the power I'd never asked for. Now I had to decide how to use it. With Dad's health declining, I hoped Celine would back off. I was wrong. Her final attack came in the form of a family-wide email. She sent it to every relative, family friend, and neighbor we knew. The subject line read, "The Truth About Rhea Williams." The message painted me as a manipulative monster who'd isolated our sick father, poisoned him against his beloved younger daughter, and engineered a hostile takeover of family assets. She claimed Dad was too unwell to make sound decisions and that Mom was too afraid of me to speak up. She ended with a plea, "If you care about our family, help me stop Rhea before she destroys everything." My phone exploded with messages from confused relatives. Some demanded explanations. Others took sides immediately. That's when Grandma Helen did something unexpected. She replied to everyone with a single sentence. "Family meeting, Sunday 2 p.m., our house, attendance mandatory." No one dared refuse Grandma. When Sunday arrived, 30 people crowded into my parents' living room. Celine sat in a corner, looking triumphant until she saw Grandma's leather journal on the coffee table. "We're going to clear the air once and for all," Grandma announced. "No more whispers, no more secrets." She turned to my parents. "Robert, Patricia, you created this mess. You will acknowledge it today." Mom started crying. Dad looked at the floor. "For 30 years," Grandma continued, "you favored one child over the other. You gave Celine everything she wanted while Rhea worked for every scrap of approval. You created this imbalance." She opened her journal and began reading entries dating back to our childhood. Christmas gifts counted, birthday celebrations compared, school achievements noted, and the different reactions they received. Then came the financial records. The accountant had found more. Years of checks written to Celine while I put myself through college. Credit cards paid off, rent covered, cars purchased. $178,000, he stated. That's the difference in financial support between the sisters over 15 years. The room fell silent. Finally, Dad spoke. "It's all true." His voice broke. "We told ourselves Rhea was stronger, more independent, that Celine needed more. But the truth is, we failed them both." Celine stood up. "This is ridiculous. You're all against me." "No, Celine," I said quietly. "We're just finally being honest." The family meeting changed everything. While it didn't heal wounds overnight, it laid bare the dysfunction that had shaped us all. In the weeks that followed, I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I called a private meeting with my parents and Celine. "I'm not giving up my position as executor," I began. "Dad was right about that. We need someone responsible managing things." Celine glared at me. "But," I continued, "I'm proposing changes to the trust. First, Mom and Dad will remain in the house as long as they wish, with all expenses covered. Second, I'm establishing a small monthly allowance for Celine." Her head snapped up. "An allowance? Like I'm a child?" "Like you're learning financial responsibility," I corrected. "The amount will increase as you demonstrate you can manage it. Third, I'm setting up a fund for Dad's medical care that no one, including me, can touch except for health expenses." Dad nodded slowly. "That seems fair." "There's one condition," I added. "Celine needs counseling. We all do, actually. This family has patterns that go back generations, and we need to break them." Mom wiped her eyes. "I'll go. I want to understand what we did wrong. Celine remained silent, her expression unreadable. Why? She finally asked. Why would you do this after everything I did? I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something I'd missed before. Behind the entitlement and manipulation was a woman who'd been taught her whole life that love meant getting everything she wanted. She'd never learned otherwise. Because you're still my sister, I said, and this isn't about winning. She didn't thank me. She didn't apologize, but she nodded once, a tiny acknowledgement. The reconstruction of our family began slowly. Mom started therapy first, then convinced Dad to join. Family dinners became weekly check-ins where we practiced honest communication. Celine resisted longest but eventually joined a financial management course. When she completed it, she asked to show me her budget, the first time she'd ever sought my approval instead of resenting it. We weren't fixed, we might never be. But we were finally facing the truth. And sometimes, that's where healing starts. 1 year has passed since that Thanksgiving dinner changed everything. Dad's health improved once the stress of secrets lifted. Mom found her voice in therapy, slowly untangling why she'd created such different rules for her daughters. And Celine? She's still Celine, dramatic, attention-seeking, occasionally self-centered, but she's trying. That counts for something. As for me, I made a decision that shocked everyone. Last month, I gathered my family in the living room of the house that caused all the trouble. I've been thinking about what to do with this place, I told them, and I've decided. They waited, tension filling the air. I'm not keeping it, I said, but I'm not giving it to Celine either. I pulled out papers from my bag. I've created a family trust. The house will remain in the family for generations, but no single person will ever own it outright again. It'll be a shared home, a gathering place, with clear rules about usage and responsibilities. Dad's eyes widened. You're giving up ownership? I'm giving up control, I corrected him. There's a difference. Mom cried. Happy tears this time. Celine stared at me, trying to find the catch. Why? She asked. Because some things aren't meant to be possessed, I explained. Some things are meant to be shared, protected, passed down. This house was never about property value. It was about recognizing who would protect the family legacy. Celine nodded slowly. For once, she didn't argue. Our family isn't perfect now. We still have disagreements. We still trigger old wounds. But we face them honestly instead of burying them under fake smiles and secret resentments. The trust I established doesn't just protect a house. It protects the truth we almost lost. That family isn't about what you get, but what you give. That showing up for people when it's hard determines who shows up for you when you need it most. I never wanted revenge. I wanted recognition, not of my superiority, but of my existence, my equal place in a family that sometimes forgot I belonged. Ultimately, the true inheritance wasn't the house or the money. It was learning that some battles aren't about winning, but about finally being seen. Sometimes revenge isn't about payback. It's about peace. And if this story touched you, subscribe right now. Because somewhere out there, another person is watching in silence, needing a reminder that they're not alone, and your one click might help them find it.